Good evening and welcome to this Happy Guru. My name is Kirsty Bentley-Taylor. We're continuing on our series tonight on ancient antidotes. And tonight I was inspired to talk to you about pranayama, which is the control of breathing in the yogic technique. And I really chose pranayama tonight because I thought, first of all, it's something that we all do all the time. We're always breathing. It's the first thing that we come into this life with. It's the thing that we'll do last before we pass on, move into our next life or whatever it is that you believe. It's something that we do all the time in our lives. And whether we're aware of it or not, we use the breath to help to calm ourselves down, to control fear and anxiety, to help build heat in our bodies and let go of heat in our bodies. And yet we always seem so it seems so irrelevant. It just happens as a reflex and it's just there and you just do it and you never really think anything about it. And I never thought too much about it until I did all my study on yoga and my teaching practice and training in India. And then we did this whole big section on pranayama. And it was the first time really that I kind of thought about it. I'd done a little bit in yoga classes before, but I'd never really been taught about it, never really been taught the history behind it or why it was so important in practice. And as you get more and more into the philosophy behind yoga and the idea of how you should be living your life within the yogic lifestyle, you become a lot more sort of focused, and you begin to strip down all the sort of the noise from outside and you bring everything more internally. And the culmination of all that means that actually you become very, very aware of the breath. You become very aware of the natural rhythm of your body, of your energy levels. You also become aware of the processes that your body goes through every day, whether it be your digestive process, your eliminatory process, your circulatory process. When you become very much aware of what's going on internally rather than externally, there are a lot of different things that the body's doing that you become finitely aware of. And my breathing was one of the things that really kind of stuck with me because I felt like, wow, like when I was a child, I remember holding on to my breath in anxiety. And I remember doing that and people saying to me, breathe, Kirsty, breathe. And I would sort of deflate and let it all out. But initially I'd sort of hold on to it. And I kind of started thinking to myself, why was that? What was it that I was trying to do for myself? What was it that I instinctively moved into? And so the pranayama part of the yoga really caught my attention. And I really wanted to share it a little bit about it with you guys tonight because I feel like this is something that we can all do for nothing, wherever we are, just to be able to calm ourselves and to be able to perhaps control some of the emotions, some of the thought processes that we go through, some of the physical effects that those thought processes will have on ourselves. Over the weeks, I've talked a lot about how much of an influence your mind, your perspective, your emotions have on your physical self. And as much as there are essential oils that you can use and practices that you can use, sometimes it takes a while to get to that place where you can actually utilize those tools. For example, you might be, out in the shops and you don't have the essential oils with you. You can't just kind of drop and begin to meditate or anything like that. But you can begin to control your breath and calm your mind using focus on your breath, which is essentially pranayama, which is essentially controlling your breath. And in the yogic lifestyle, the yogic system, and the 8 limbs of yoga that the Saint Patanjali passed down to us, he talks about the breath being linked to 2 things, being linked to prana, which is like energy, and to citta, which is consciousness. And they are intertwined so beautifully. One cannot really exist without the other. One is constantly affecting the other. And it begins to build this beautiful picture for you of how the energy in our body is so inherently connected to the consciousness that we have, not just ourselves, but also the consciousness that's permeating throughout everything in the entire world. So you really begin to kind of understand that what you're taking in and out of your body and the energy that that's creating actually begins to affect not only your own self, but the energy around you as well. And then therefore that permeating out into the energetic world, into the kind of the space, if you like, that we would see as our reality, but in fact is really a kind of a deep level of energetic consciousness that comes from one universal source. I think that's kind of pretty much where everything seems to be heading now, whether you're looking at quantum physics or philosophy or, science, even physical science, physics, chemistry, all these sort of things have broken down the atom, and they found out that inside the atom, there's the Bohr atom, and inside the Bohr atom, there's actually energy or consciousness. And again, in some instances, you believe it might be consciousness because it's creative, but in other instances, you believe it's energy because it's creative. So this idea that the prana and the citta, the energy and the consciousness, are so intrinsically linked and really work together and as one in a union that is perhaps in layman's terms really too complicated and precise to explain. It just gives you that idea that actually with the control of the citta and the prana, with the control of the consciousness and the energy, you will be able to control the energy source that is passing through you and permeating out into the world as well, and have some influence on that. Now, when we think about meditation, for example, and you think about how when you get loads and loads of people together to meditate, you can have a rippling effect out from that level of consciousness. And I believe it's the same thing that happens with the energy that those people are projecting out as well at the same time. Because when you go into meditation, you calm your breath and you begin to breathe much more deeply and much more slowly. And those people who get to really extensive parts of meditation will actually retain the breath and hold it without breathing for a long time. Some of the history of yoga talks about sages and saints, rishis, who have practiced in caves and in dwellings and all this sort of thing throughout history. And they have meditated for sort of 50 years in some instances without coming out of that meditation. And when people have gone in to see them, they've just found this body in perfect composition, sitting still, but with no obvious signs of life, really, to the point where, you wouldn't be able to feel a breath. And those monks, those sages, those rishis have practiced for such a long time that they're able to absorb the breath in, hold the energy of the breath, and then take their consciousness out of the body, out of the mind, out of the reality that we perceive in this world, in this dimension, and take themselves into a different dimension, only to be able to return when they're ready back into the body, which has been preserved by this sort of dormant prana, which has kept the cells alive, which has kept the organs alive. Nothing's kind of decomposed. I mean, this sort of history for me is just fascinating because it's certainly nothing we were taught at school. It's not really anything that, I've heard come through my culture or anything like that. I'm sure it's probably different if you've lived in India or in Asia with, a lot of the religious and the historical influences throughout the country are of folklore that have been passed down, and whether or not you believe in that religion or not really makes no odds. It's all about the history of your country, the history of your culture, and those sorts of things. They're told to the children by the elders, to give you the idea that you have this magical force, that you are someone unique and special, and that you can do almost anything in the world as long as your heart is in the right place and your intention is in the right place. At least that's the kind of the feeling that I got from it studying in India and then studying Buddhism in Thailand as well, which there's a lot of similarities between the yogic philosophy and the Buddhist philosophy, as there are permeating through a lot of Southeast Asia cultures and religions and philosophies. It's fascinating, and I'm often looking for I suppose the similar rhythms that move through, so that I can kind of feel into that time myself and begin to determine what were the predominant messages that were coming through, that came through in all the religions of that time, from the great philosophers of that time and around that time. Lao Tzu also spoke about this sort of thing in the Tao Te Ching as well, talking about the energy and being able to calm the energy, to be able to really focus your attention and your mindset, and to be able to align yourself with what he called the Tao, which was or is the idea really, again, of this permeating consciousness that goes through everything. It cannot be named. That which can be named is not the Tao. It's this it's this energy, it's this consciousness, it's this prana, this citta that permeates through everything and is. And through years and years of internal exploration, and passed down through the sages of ancient India, or the ancient Indian subcontinent, as it would have been beforehand, before, we just dissected everything into countries and took ownership of things. There was just one massive area that people were living in. And instead of going out and looking constantly at the external world, although there were people at that time obviously doing that, I imagine that wars were still being fought at that time. But these sages and rishis who passed down through the ancient texts that we were able to access today were looking internally as well, and they were really dissecting consciousness and dissecting the human mind, the body, the emotions, the spirit, and beginning to build pathways, build pictures, if you like, so that everybody could understand how it would best be to be able to keep yourself healthy, how it would best be to be able to rise with consciousness. Now, somewhere along the line, they seem to have gotten a little bit kind of distracted by wealth and the need for things and the want for more. But certainly when you read through the texts, the ancient texts of old, it's, whether it be from Lao Tzu in China, whether it be from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali in India, whether we even look back into Mayan texts, and some of the rituals that they had around in that as well, you're able to find so many similarities that you kind of get the idea that this was an awakening at that time. And so looking back through that and coming into pranayama is the ability to be able to harness that prana citta relationship, that energy conscious relationship, and it's all linked through the breath. Now, the reason it's linked through the breath is because of the ability to generate energy. This is how I understand it. Okay, so it's the ability to generate energy. When you breathe in, it's almost like a pulling force, and when you breathe out, it's a releasing force. And if you just look at something basic like an elastic band, when you pull out it expands, and when you let it go, it contracts or it detracts, and it goes back towards one another. And the energy really comes from not just the force, but the relaxed part of it as well. Same way as our muscles do. The energy is built in both parts of the muscles. Energy is used and expended differently from each one, but it's generated, an energy or a force or a heat is generated from both movements. And so when we're looking at the breath, the internal pull in of the breath is kind of like one aspect of it, and the external and then release of the breath is another aspect to it. But this is constant movement, and so this is almost like, if you think about it as friction, it's going to generate heat, it's going to generate an energy, right? Just taking it back into a more perhaps a term that we're more used to when we think about energy. Like heat is quite an easy one to be able to get your head around and get the idea of, because of course it's something that we can see, but we can also feel. So if you think about like rubbing your hands together, for example, when you rub your hands together really, really quick, you generate the energy between your hands and your palms become hot. So a great way of warming your hands up in the freezing cold weather. So it's that kind of idea. As you move one way, so you're moving the other, and you're constantly pulling like that. And this is the thing that's generating the energy. And this is why the prana, the citta, that bind is linked so intrinsically with the breath, because that's what we're constantly doing, constantly keeping the energy moving within our body through our breath. And the word pranayama, prana meaning energy or vital life source, is probably a better translation. And ayama meaning the control of, or the extension of, the elongation of. Again, it's that kind of ability to be able to rub that little bit further, if you like. So instead of just the usual breath pattern, if we imagine rubbing our hands together as just being like the normal breath pattern, so you breathe in, you breathe out, you breathe in and you breathe out, and you really don't think about it as you go on through your day. But when you do think about it, and for example, when you might like to relax, a lot of people would involuntarily be like, and you relax, and it's a lifting up of the shoulders and it's a dropping down of the shoulders. It's that kind of lifting up, extending through the lungs, extending through the lower core, so that the diaphragm is dropped down even lower. You're lifting up, you're breathing into the very top part of your lungs, and then you breathe out and you relax and everything just comes back again. So again, that natural thing that we all do when we want to relax is just taking it that little bit further, only to come back again. Okay, so if you think about pranayama as being the elongation of breath or the life force, and why it's seen to be like that, then I think it becomes a little bit more relative to you. You actually think to yourself, oh yeah, I would do that naturally anyway. So, maybe this isn't such a stretch from the truth or from my reality, because actually I know that I do those things anyway. The same thing when we start running, right? When we start running, you start to pant. And the reason that you start to pant is not simply because you need to draw more energy through the breath, through the oxygen that's coming into the body to be able to feed the muscles, to be able to keep them moving, to be able to get them going, because you need to go quickly, but also so that as we breathe out, we let the heat out, the heat that we're generating through the excessive movement out of our bodies. You think about a dog, they will sit there and pant just with their tongues open, and it's all about the external breath. It's all about the letting go. It's the releasing of what's inside out. When you pant, you don't, it's just, we just not work. We just don't work like that. It just, and animals don't work like that either. It's all about, when you're panting, it's all about expulsion of the breath. It's the letting out, it's the getting out. And one of the interesting scientific things about releasing the breath, exhalation, is that actually it's aligned alongside the toxin release within our bodies. So this parasympathetic nervous system, every time you breathe out, it releases. So it releases any nerves, any anxiety, anything like that. But it also releases hormones and chemicals down into your body that enable your muscles and your internal organs as well to kind of let go. So every time you breathe in, you're drawing energy into the body, and every time you breathe out, you're really letting it go and allowing your body to detoxify, allowing all the any pent up emotions, energies, anything like that to have a chance to be released. Now, this is obviously for your overall health, and your body knows how to look after itself holistically. So as long as you're kind of in pattern with that, and you don't have any respiratory problems, or you're not encumbered by terrible air or anything like that, you're going to be able to perform these actions again without really even thinking about it. Your body's just going to get on with it and do it. It's fantastic, really, how we work. And bringing some mindfulness into this as well, just again, gives you this whole opportunity to just really build love and admiration for yourself and your body, and hopefully look after it a little bit better than we often do. So when we're thinking about the breath being elongated, and then of course when it comes back again is where it's long breaths in and it's long breaths out, and that would be harnessing the most amount of power, if you like, that you have in your lungs. So as you breathe in deeply, you're elongating the breath and you're drawing in the most amount of oxygen that you can breathe in, and then again as you breathe out in a long fashion, like really taking a while to breathe out, calmly, considered, breath out, long breath out, you will also be able to have the maximum amount of time for your body to let go of those toxins and to release not just the chemical stuff from inside in your body, like not just the I don't know, the toxins from the air, or drinking or smoking or alcohol, or processed foods, whatever it is, but also from the emotional and the mental stress that you've endured that day. And so pranayama is a really great way of being able to just bring in a little bit of adjustment into the body in terms of using all the systems to really harness the power and the depth of the power of the breath, not just for your physical self, but also for your mental health and for your emotional health, all of which of course affect like your energy levels and your spiritual health. So when we begin to practice pranayama, we are really looking to keep the breath in control, but we're also looking to isolate the organs that we would use primarily for breathing. So again, the majority of us would breathe into the thoracic chest, which is kind of the part here. I'm just going to actually sit up a little bit so I can just demonstrate. We've got 3 parts to our lungs. I didn't know this before pranayama practice either. So I'm just going to cut my head off again. And I'm going to show you there are 3 parts to our lungs, right? This is around my diaphragm area. This is my clavicle bone up here. This is my kind of my the highest most rib, the top of my collarbone, if you like, there. Okay, and there's three parts of the lung. So you've got your belly, you've got the lower part of the lung going out into your diaphragm, you've got your thoracic, which is here, and you've got your clavicle, which is here. And the majority of us will breathe through the thoracic chest. Normally throughout life, we're just kind of in, out, in, out. There may be a little bit of movement in the diaphragm and in the stomach, but generally speaking, we breathe into the heart space, we breathe out of the heart space, and it just is our natural place to go. It's energy retentive, which means that it saves you energy as you do that, because as you're breathing into the heart, of course, the lungs, you're coming directly into, what happens is you've got your lungs like there, and you're breathing in, you come down through the esophagus, comes into the point, the bronchial tubes that come out then into the lungs there, and you've got your heart center just slightly down here. So basically the air comes into the lungs, it permeates out into the blood system, it goes down into the heart then pumps everything all around, right? And when that's happening, if you're breathing into this localized area, of course you're saving energy. You're not using the full capacity of your lungs, but you are kind of saving energy and allowing your breath to be utilized in its most sort of condensed form. You're not expending and expanding, not overusing, if you like, but at the same time, you're really not harnessing the potential of your lungs. So in yoga, we talk about the three parts to our lungs, the diaphragm, the thoracic, and the clavicle, and we practice breath movements that engage all three. So I'm going to show you some of those later. I just kind of want to give you a little bit of an idea about pranayama and about the kind of the physics of it as well. So as I say, normally you would kind of breathe in just into the thoracic chest, in and out. But when we're engaging the full lung, we would also engage the lower lung, which comes down just below the stomach, just above the lower intestine here, and the diaphragm, which will push down, almost down past the belly button. And towards the lower intestine. So your diaphragm's going to stop about there. And the top of your lungs come right underneath the collarbone here. They come up to about here. It's only when we're really in full exertion, or if somebody's having an asthma attack, that you might even be aware that you have a part of your lungs up here. It's crazy. I didn't really know. I kind of thought our lungs were about like that big, that they kind of just were, just there. But again, when you become aware of your breath and become aware of using your breath, you can identify parts of your body as well that you really didn't know existed. I mean, through deep breathing, I've ascertained that I have muscles in my back that I never would have been aware of had it not been for deep breathing, for pranayama, for yogic breath specifically. And like I say, we all tend to breathe into the thoracic initially, and we probably would only breathe into the belly if we're, running or something like that. We take a quick run for the trail, and you sort of, and then you can feel the thoracic's moving, the belly's moving, and it's all in and out and in and out until you begin to calm down a little bit, and then you'll notice that the belly will calm before the thoracic, and that's just because of the way that we've developed, really, without any knowledge or any conscious development of the lower part of the lung or the higher part of the lung. So when we're looking at this of this full part of the lung, you can see how much space there is to use, to utilize, and to engage when you're thinking about your energy and your sita, so your prana and your sita, your energy and your consciousness. It's a huge part of your body, especially like the upper body as well, that is involved in harnessing the power of the energy in your body and the consciousness within your body. And so it's a big area to kind of be utilizing and using. And as it's pulling one way and pulling the other, so this part of you is constantly going in and out, up and down the friction, if you like, again, looking at the friction, looking at that ideal so that we can understand. And perhaps just get our heads around what it is that we're looking at here with the breath is just constant. And it's no coincidence. Sorry, I forgot the word then. No coincidence either that you've got so many chakra points along your pranic or your main pranic system, right? So you really got your throat chakra here, because your throat chakra sort of comes down to around here, so that encompasses the area underneath the collarbone as well. Then you've got your heart chakra, then you've got your sacral chakra, your pelvic, like your pelvic chakra and your root chakra as well. So the root chakra is just a bit lower for that, but you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 chakras in that point there that you're able to really harness and engage more than anything else, I suppose, with the use of the breath. Certainly the heart chakra is a massive one. But also, through pranayama practices, you can really engage the throat chakra. You can really warm through that. And around the kind of the midline of your body, where it's your creative thought, it's your ability to really express and create in terms of divine creation. There's a lot, like there's sexual energy down there and all that sort of stuff as well. There's a lot of stuff that you can shift and move around just breathing properly through those chakras as well. So I don't want to get too caught up with that, but I just, I just wanted to kind of, I suppose, impress that there's a lot of things that ride on your breath that you're not aware of, and I certainly wasn't aware of it at all. I mean, I've every time I keep dipping into this subject, I find out more. And it's, again, it's fascinating to me that we don't know more and that we don't look at the breath more, because like I say, it's the first thing that you do when you come into this world. The baby comes out, smack their bum or smack them on the back of the chest, and the first thing they do is go, oh, and the second thing they do is go, wah, and then at the end of our life, it's his last breath, the last breath he took with his last breath or her last breath. It's literally, that will be the sound that you identify with somebody passing on, is that final, and they're gone. And I've experienced this myself. So it's very poignant for me. So the fact that we don't isolate it more and look at it more in our lives, and indeed in our culture, in our health culture, seems crazy to me, because like I say, this is something that we're doing all the time, that we do involuntarily, and yet we pay no mind to it at all. So the way that the yogis and the sages pass down the information, I'm going to read a few things to you, because I started kind of reading through all my books and looking through all the texts that I've got on pranayama as part of the yogic lifestyle, the 8 limbs of yoga, as passed on down by Patanjali. And some of it was, some of it's very yoga, so I've kind of picked out, I've been going through with the highlighting, but I just wanted to read a few little bits of it. The first thing is from the Light on Yoga Sutras of Patanjali by BKS Iyengar. So Iyengar is, he's passed on now, but he was one of he devised the whole Iyengar practice of yoga, which fundamentally has it's hatha yoga, but it's also using lots of props and slightly different adjustments to be able to assume asanas. It's been heralded as a way of being able to safely move and adjust into asana when you perhaps because of our bodies now. When yoga was passed down, the idea was probably that people's bodies were less contaminated, they had more energy in them, they were less constricted by sedentary lifestyles and, excess weight and all the toxins that we bring into our bodies through the air and through cars and fumes and factories and all that sort of thing. So the world was a lot more of a cleaner place. So generally speaking, people's bodies would have been a lot cleaner in those days. The food that they ate had absolutely no chemical involvement at all. I mean, that's pretty much a given. And also, the lifestyle that they led wasn't permeated by stress the whole time. The world that we live in now is very stress orientated, and that brings its own set of problems into your body and into your mind, into your emotions. So when they were looking at all this, they were kind of assuming at some level that this was going to be, I suppose, the body that they were experiencing now was going to be carried on. But what Iyengar did was basically look at the fact that our bodies aren't what they perhaps could be, or were back then, and give you props and give you ideas and give you alignments to be able to adjust your practice, so that if you do have, a stiff back or really tight hamstrings or calf muscles or anything like that, there are ways of being able for you to still practice yoga without, and keep an alignment without overstretching or overexertion or stretching muscles that weren't designed to be stretched in that pose. So, he's a very famous guy in the yoga world. And he very famously wrote the Light on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and was revered for it because his historical knowledge of Hinduism and Brahmanism is very, very in depth. So the yogic world really basically, were very thankful that he, with all his depth of knowledge and all of his training and all of the experiences that he'd had and the people that he trained under throughout his life, he was able to give his perspective on what Patanjali was sending down through the generations for us in the Yoga Sutras. So, of course, the Yoga Sutras talk about pranayama. At its basic level, they say peace may be reached by the even sending forth and control of the life breath. So that's at this basic level. But Iyengar then goes on to explain how this is. So this gives you a little bit of history as well. I found this quite interesting. So he says pranayama, the fourth constraint of yoga, that's within the Eightfold Path, is what the heart is to the human body. So it's the essence, if you like. That's how I kind of read that. Without the heart, the majority of the body wouldn't function. Things, when the heart stops, certain things will carry on for a certain period of time, but ultimately speaking, the system that is that is pushed around by the heart, the circulatory system, the respiratory system, the endocrine system, all of those things are reliant on the heart, and so when the endocrine system stops, the signaling stops. When the respiratory system stops, the oxygen then stops, and of course when the heart stops and the circulatory system stops, then nothing's getting anywhere, and so and that's when degeneration begins, and we know the rest, right? So it's that important in this Eightfold Path, and there are only eight paths, and pranayama is technically number 4. There's some kind of there's a question as to whether or not the eight-limbed path is to be seen as a successive path, or whether or not actually it should all be practiced as one. Certainly nowadays it seems to be kind of all practiced at one, and there is some idea that actually it should be practiced at one, that you should actually try to practice meditating before you've accomplished every asana that there ever was, and that actually you can start asana before you start on the yamas and the niyamas, the observances and the self-controls that you should implement in your life according to the yogic scriptures. But that's pranayama is really essential to yoga practice. And certainly when you practice asana, you become very, very aware of your breath. So maybe that's kind of an idea of the fact that it guides you smoothly into pranayama. So he says, normally the flow of breath is unrestrained and irregular, which we know. This is what we experience every day. Observing these variations and additions, the mind to control the inflow, outflow, and retention of the breath in a regular, rhythmic pattern is pranayama. So it says prana is an auto-energizing force which creates a magnetic field in the form of the universe and plays with it both to maintain and to destroy for further creation. So kind of, part energetic consciousness, if you like. It permeates every individual as well as the universe at all levels. It acts as physical energy, as mental energy, where the mind gathers information, and as intellectual energy with a discriminative faculty where information is examined and filtered. So this is where the consciousness kind of bit comes in, right? It's, the idea that it's intellectual really gives it that whole idea that it can create, it can form ideas, it can form patterns, plans, and bring something into being. So, and he goes on to say, all that vibrates in the universe is prana. So this is how you can identify the prana that you have in your body with the world and oneness, which we've spoken about before as well. It gravitates through heat, light, gravity, magnetism, vigor, power, vitality, electricity. Life and spirit are all forms of prana. It is the cosmic personality, potent in all beings and non-beings. It is the prime mover of all activity. It is the wealth of life. This self-energizing force is the principle of life and of consciousness. It is the creation of all beings in the universe. All beings are born through it and live by it. When they die, their individual breath dissolves into the cosmic breath. So here from my scientific mind and from my scientific research, then I begin to align prana and this energy in with what we found inside the atom, right? The smallest, tiniest piece of matter known to man and split that open, and you've got something even tinier and smaller, but it is still part matter. But then you break open that matter, and inside that, this is where we've got this prana. This is where the prana and the sita, that beautiful combination, that's where it lives, that's where it resides, and that's why it permeates through everything, because it is, you're unable to see it, but it's there. It defines itself by what it's created around itself and for itself. And yeah, if you think of it, I mean, I always think about consciousness really as kind of being thought, because thought is so creative. Whether you're thinking, if you think about, let's think it's Valentine's Day tomorrow, so let's think about love, something beautiful, and when you think about love and you think about how much joy that brings, and if you just close your eyes for a moment now and think about somebody that you love, notice the feeling that you feel in your heart. Notice the way that your face would soften, your muscles may soften, maybe you'll smile. Maybe your eyes, if you don't close them, maybe you feel like your eyes slightly widen a little bit more, something like that. And this is all the expression of love. And love is a thought, love is a feeling. And so again, it's creative. Love is a way of being able to really express from some other level that is not physical, a feeling that, I suppose, I mean, I don't know how to define love. It's crazy, isn't it? But it's the ultimate, isn't it? It's almost undefinable in it. We all know it. We got it. We all know when we feel it. We all know when we've lost it. But it's undefinable in exactly what it is, because actually it's constantly creating. It's constantly shifting. It's constantly absorbing and letting go, and absorbing and letting go. So I kind of think that this love and the prana and the sita, again, everything's just all so integrated. And I, this for me, when I begin to think about what that integration is, this is God to me, or source, or, or the universe, or whatever you want to call it, however it is that you explain this higher consciousness, this higher being, that's kind of where it comes from. That to me is how I align it all in my mind, is this idea of love that is constantly changing, moving, but ever present and ever strong. And prana, the life force, and sita, this kind of consciousness, again, this creative source. Anyway, I digress. Got into love there, got into Valentine's Day, but it's just a way of being able to align that with what you already experience and really bring it into your reality as something that is true for you. So I'm just trying to kind of make it so that you can identify with it a little bit more. So it permeates life, creating the sun, the moon, the clouds, the wind and the rain, the earth, and all forms of matter. It is both being and non-being. Each and everything or being, including man, takes shelter under it. Prana is the fundamental energy and the source of all knowledge. So prana energy and sita consciousness are in constant contact with each other. They are like twins. So he's going to explain it probably better than I did here. Prana becomes focused where sita is, and sita where prana is. In yogic texts, it is said that as long as the breath is still, prana is still, and hence sita is still. All types of vibrations and fluctuations come to a standstill when prana and sita are steady and silent. So this is the bit that's interesting to me in terms of our health, right? So it says, all types of vibrations and fluctuations come to a standstill when prana and sita are steady and silent. And before that, BKS Iyengar has gone on to explain that sita and consciousness, energy and consciousness, prana and sita are in constant contact within each other, and they're like twins. So they're moving very, very similarly. When we talk about how cells, that we're all made up of, how they move and shift within the energy around us and the environment that they perceive to be around them, and how we can manifest disease because of the bad environment perhaps that they're experiencing around them, or because they haven't quite learned how to interpret that environment, or there's something that's damaged the cell so that it can't interpret that environment. We're really looking at the vibration around those cells, that when we're looking at that environment, we're really looking at the vibration, the energy that's around that. Now, as we've spoken about before, and as we know, thought is a vibration. Thoughts will vibrate down into your body and they will become stuck in your fibers, or they'll be released depending on the kind of thought that they are, depending on how many times you think that thought. We've discussed in previous shows how the mind will begin to form neural pathways down into certain parts of your body that correlate with the emotions that you're feeling. And if those pathways are deepened through constant repetitive thought, they become channels pretty much that then feed into that thought. So it becomes a little bit of, again, like, that sort of shifting thing is that actually you tell yourself, for example, that you are not good enough, and that you're not worthy enough times, and you begin to build a neural pathway that goes down into your heart, for example, or into your stomach, wherever it is that's going. And then what happens is when that pathway isn't being fed by that, the cells begin to react with, oh, hang on a minute, where's that vibration that I want? And you'll begin to manifest it to be able to feed it. So it becomes this kind of two-way channel. And that's how negative thoughts breeds essentially throughout your body. And that's how it affects your cells throughout your body. And this is how holistic health and all the lots of different therapies are beginning to read human health. To understand that actually, as much as nutrition and a healthy lifestyle and the quality of water, food, nutrients that we bring into our body is all very, very important. It's also what goes on up here, and really essentially your emotions as well. So I'm going to say from that down here, that is a massive, massive influence on your physical health, and how you can move through life, and from everything in terms of disease to longevity. If you're somebody who is on their last nerve the whole time, it's very likely that you won't have a long period of life. And again, yoga goes into it to explain this as well, because it says that the yogis of old, the rishis, the sages of old, those people who were looking at consciousness and looking at pranayama and looking at the breath as a life source, were also studying the life sources of everything else around them as well, studying the life sources of the animals, studying life sources of plants, those sorts of things. And those life forces that were slower in breath, that were slower in growth, lived a lot longer. And so the idea that you should extend your breath comes from that. There's a famous part in one of these books that I remember from my teaching, actually, that was talking about, I remember it was my tutor at the time, my guru at the time, who was talking to me about elephants. And he was saying that, if you think about an elephant, they can live for sort of 60, 70 years. Everything is so slow, for such a big animal as well. It's a lot to be carrying around there. But the heartbeat is slow. The breath is slow. The movement is slow. Everything is at a steady pace just to kind of get you there and to keep you calm, so that every step you take is measured, is calm, is precise as well. Elephants, if you've ever been on an elephant, they are amazing. I mean, I don't think they can even see their feet, unless they really kind of dip down. I don't think they can naturally see their feet. And obviously they can sense where they're going, but it's like they have this sixth sense around their feet as to where they're going to place their feet. I've been on a couple of elephant treks in northern and southern Thailand, and the way that they use their feet to navigate through rocks, to navigate through mud, it's like as soon as they put their foot down and the ground begins to give way, they stop, they lift the foot, and they'll reposition it and try to find somewhere before shifting on. Dogs and horses, other animals that don't live as long and move a lot more quickly don't necessarily do that. It's almost the motion that carries them on. Or if they lose one foot, they've got the other three to kind of, steady and rebalance. But elephants are very, very precise and exact in where they put their feet. And I always remember thinking that it was fascinating that he brought that up, because it aligns that long, deliberate breath, deliberate movement, slowing down, the calming down of everything with longevity. And certainly, if as an elephant you're able to kind of survive 70 odd years without the benefits of the level of consciousness perhaps that we have, then, who's to say we can't live for longer than the usual sort of 80 80 odd years, 70, 80 years that we're getting out of our bodies at the moment. And this was the idea behind pranayama, was that actually you can elongate your lifespan by calming everything down, by bringing yourself into a constant constant kind of leveled out, slower place, whereby you are really utilizing all the systems of the body to maximum effect in a calm and tranquil way. So that was, that was kind of one of the things that I suppose really interested me about that, and the parallels that the rishis and the sages were drawing with the world's existence, the outside world, if you like, and our existence, and how it was that we'd be able to develop that. So all types of vibrations and fluctuations come to a standstill when prana and citta are steady and silent. So calming the mind, calming the breath, calming the body, all of those things together, working in harmony and really beginning to settle everything down, settle everything to the point where it can just vibrate nice and gently and absorb what it needs to, eliminate what it needs to, and have that beautiful, slow pace where you're drawing in the most amount of energy, you're expulsing, I can't even think of the word, getting rid of the most amount of toxins, because of course as you breathe in for a long time, so you're breathing out for a long time. So you're really utilizing that energy to get rid of all the toxins and to bring in the maximum amount of energy that you can into your body, the maximum amount of life force. Then moving on, he says it's, so the idea that you are like, so this is the idea, I suppose, of the movement of the breath as well, I thought was interesting, that I just wanted to kind of touch on. There's a whole story around, Hindu philosophy and yogic philosophy have all these beautiful stories in where they've really tried to, I think it's like a show of the times as well, is that, the people at that time were so used to speaking sort of metaphorically and in story context, where you could align yourself perhaps with the protagonist, with the main character, and you could identify with them and you could understand the message that you were being given, because actually you could put yourself in their position. And so when you look through these historical texts and you read through these ancient translations and manuscripts that have been passed down, a lot of it is through storytelling, the way of the old, right? And it can be really, really beautiful. So one of the ways that they describe pranayama is through this ability to I suppose using lords and mountains and examples of our external physicality to really bring inwards into your own independence, or not independent, in your own sense of self, so that you can kind of identify in with it. So what they say is it's the rope, the pranayama is the rope which dashes or controls the spine in respiration. Head and the tail of Odysseus, which is one of the characters in the story that is around pranayama, represent the different nadis, which are energy channels in the body, or the upward and downward course of the in and out breath. So in yoga, we believe that there are 84,000 nadis. We work principally on, I think it's 84. There's a very close correlation with the nerve and like the nerve patterns or the nerve pathways through our body, as there are energy channels. And as actually interesting, I was talking to my chiropractor about this on Tuesday, and we were talking about, she talks about the spine and I talk about, like I talk about energy. She talks about kind of muscular channels, if you like she was talking about the lumbar region, and I was saying, that's interesting, that's around my heart chakra. And it was just very interesting how you say potato, I say patata, but it's the same thing. So same thing here as well. The head and the tail of Odysseus represent the Pingala and the Ida nadis. So these are the energy channels, or the upward and downward course of the in and out of breath. And again, as you're lifting up, you're coming up, and as you're breathing out, you're going down. Okay, so the idea was that it's this kind of part of a snake, and the head is twisting around. There's a lot of snake visualization in yoga. There's a lot. We talk about the Kundalini, and that's kind of given visuals as a snake. It's the rising of the two snakes intertwining around the spine would be your energies and prana going around your spine, coming up towards your head, and then coming out essentially through your nose. And this is one of the reasons, again, I suppose, that we identify the breath as well with the prana, because it's that energy that we feel going up the spine. When you align all your chakras and you clear the pathways between them, you really begin to feel like this rush, this surge of energy. I only felt it once or twice. And actually I felt it once, a real surge, and another couple of times where I felt like, oh, it's coming and it hasn't quite gotten to my head. So it's this kind of this surge of energy that comes up through the spine and just really elongates you up like that. But essentially it comes out and out through the nostrils, and it crosses over there before it comes back down again as well. And then another part of it, so inhalation and exhalation are the two ends of the central nervous system, the rod that churns to create the energy that is then stored in the 7 chambers of the spine, or the chakras of the spine. Together they churn the in-breath and out-breath to generate the vital energy known as prana. So that might give you a little bit more kind of the visualization of what prana is and how it's formed in the body. So some of the things that pranayama has been, some of the health benefits that pranayama has been aligned with are pretty significant, I think, especially in today's world, where there's a lot of anxiety around, and there's a lot of depression, and there's a lot of worry, and there is, when there is worry and anxiety, there tends to be shortened breath. There tends to be quicker shortened breath, with breathing very much from the thoracic rather than the full lung. And it's short, sharp breaths that mirror really the way our mind is working. When it says, like, if you calm the citta, calm the prana, then you begin to calm the fluctuations of the body. If you turn that on its head and work the other way, where the mind is busy and the prana is busy and everything is busy, everything is going 90 to the dozen. And of course, that for us is stress. That's a very typical symptom of stress. And so some of the ways that you can use pranayama for your own health benefits would be to deal with stress and anxiety, also to really begin to calm down at the end of the day, rather than, reaching for kind of a bottle of wine or a cigarette or tea and cake and, all those sorts of things, even rather than just slumping in front of the TV and giving up to entertainment for a good couple of hours of, soap operas and funny things on the television. You can begin to just calm yourself that little bit more quickly using breath control. And it's the idea that if you sit and you calm yourself down, then not only do you calm the mind, but you calm all the internal systems of the body as well, therefore relieving them of the pressure of the day. Because there are certain things, like, for example, when you have a cigarette, it actually stimulates your mind, but it calms down parts of your body, right? When you take a deep breath in, you raise up the prana in the body, you raise up the kind of the energy level in the body, but it's healing energy. So it's an energy that is actually going out and being spent straight away. It's not being held, whereas a toxin would be held because it can't do anything more than feed into your body and produce certain chemical calculations, disturbances, if you like. But that's basically it. So when you breathe in, actually you're doing yourself more favor just breathing in natural air than you are cigarette smoke, irrespective of the difference that it has on your health. But perhaps one of the things that we align smoking with, for example, is the fact that actually our nervous system says, oh, you're taking a big breath in. Right? You're taking a big breath in like you would do if you're having a sigh. So you go, ah, like that, right? And when you take that first toke of a cigarette, it's a big breath in. Your central nervous system goes, oh, good, lovely. We're having, we're calming down. And actually what you're doing is pulling the toxins into your body, but affecting your central nervous system immediately. Once the toxins get going, once they get into your brain, into your blood, and then subsequently into your brain, that's when the stimulation starts. And so, but initially you're kicking in that parasympathetic nervous system and your respiratory system, which sends a message up to your brain saying, oh, look, okay, we're relaxing, and it's a long out as you exhale. People say that smoking relaxes them, calms them down. That I would suggest that the majority of that, because actually if you look at the way the human body reacts to nicotine and to the chemicals in cigarettes, everything goes on high stimulation. It doesn't go on calming down. So I would hasten to guess that actually that feeling of calm comes from the fact that you begin to just deep breathe by the whole action of drawing and inhaling through a cigarette, because if you have anything and you have to breathe into anything, whether it be, breathalyzer or an asthma pump or a cigarette or anything, there is forced inhalation and forced exhalation to a certain extent, because you have to really toke in to breathe in, and to breathe out, you're letting go out of force rather than at a natural pace as you would with your breath. So like I say, my hunch is that actually, if you did the kind of the science around all the systems of the body, one of the reasons that people find smoking so relaxing is because actually they begin a pattern of deep breathing that lasts the length of a cigarette, which is not something that they would drop into ordinarily in their lives. So maybe a cigarette lasts like 3 minutes, maybe 3-4 minutes, I don't know, on average. And the fact that you go outside as well, and you get a breath of fresh air and all that sort of thing as well. There's a lot of things there that I think really invoke the feeling of relaxation when you have a cigarette. But primarily, I believe it's down to the breathing, the way that our bodies respond to it. So when we're talking about pranayama, we break the body down into different parts, which are called koshas. Excuse me. There are sectioned off to different parts of your body. You've got a kosha that encompasses the head down into the arms, all the way down to the fingertips, but it doesn't cover the thoracic chest, if you like, which sort of comes up around here, goes down, and then comes up. So it follows really, I suppose, the line of your rib cage. If you feel your rib cage, it sort of comes down and around and up there. Then you've got another kosha that then comes from the center of the rib cage, where you can feel it suddenly begins to get soft, right down to around the belly button area, that little band around there. You've got another one then that drops down from the belly area all the way down through into the groin and into the genital area. And then you've got another kosha that goes all the way down through the legs. Now, these are all different types of prana that are held in the body. And they are all subject to different pranic experiences, if you like, through breath control, through the ayama, the restraint and the control, the elongation of the breath. So the Annamaya kosha, which is the kosha that feeds through the food and the material body, so the sort of the fleshy bit, if you like. Then you've got the Manomaya kosha, which is the mental body. That's what that part is. It's just affecting the mental self. The Pranamaya kosha, which is the bioplasmic or vital energy body, which is the part really that can be controlled by the pranayama. The Vinja Namaya, sorry, I don't know if I've pronounced that right. The Vinja Namaya kosha, the psychic or higher mental body. So that's kind of like your spiritual self coming out into your aura, your senses, your perceptions, your intuition, that sort of thing. And the Anandamaya kosha, the transcendental or bliss body. So that's your spirit. That's kind of and everything that is outside that you can't see, and that most people are really unaware that they have. These sheets, they tend to call them, because nothing is separate, everything is as one. So the way that they describe that, so that you can visualize it and perhaps get greater understanding, is that it's kind of one inside the other, and the practices of pranayama work mainly with the pranamaya kosha, which is responsible for the vital energy of the body, but because they're also interlinked, they have an effect on the others as well. So when we're talking about really being able to heal the body through breath, this is why we're aligning the prana into different parts of the body. We're able to affect different parts of the body specifically with how we control our energy force. And so we're able to cleanse and clean really different parts of the body using different pranayamic methods and techniques. So just want to read you another little bit about pranayama lifestyle, breath and the pranayama, and then I'm going to give you a couple of demonstrations and some practices that you'll be able to practice at home and alongside with me as well. So pranayama or prana and lifestyle. It says lifestyle, and now I'm reading from one of the books that I got, my Asana Pranayama Mudra and Bandha book by Swami Satyananda Sarawasi, who I studied, this book that I studied when I was doing my yoga teacher training. Excuse me. Lifestyle has a profound impact on the pranayama kosha and its pranas. So the pranayama kosha being these 5 sheaths, and so the Pranayama kosha being the sheath that revolves around energy, and its pranas, the nadis, the energy channels that lead through that one, so to be able to affect it. Physical activities such as exercise, work, sleep, intake of food, and sexual relations all affect the distribution and flow of prana in the body. Faculties of the mind, such as emotion, thought, and imagination, affect the pranic body even more. Irregularities in lifestyle, dietary indiscretions, and stress deplete and obstruct the pranic flow. This results in what people experience as being drained of energy, something I'm sure we've all felt. Depletion of energy in a particular prana leads to the devitalization of the organs and limbs it governs, and ultimately to disease or metabolic dysfunction. So basically, when one of those parts isn't getting the right level of energy, that's when it leads to disease. The techniques of pranayama reverse this process, energizing and balancing the different pranas within Pranamaya kosha. Pranayama practices can be performed to be able to regulate and restrict the amount of energy that are being sent and being distributed throughout the body. Breath, health, and pranayama. The breath is the most vital process of the body. It influences the activities of each and every cell, and most importantly, is intimately linked with the performance of the brain. Human beings breathe around 15 times per minute and 21,600 times per day. Respiration fuels the burning of oxygen and glucose, producing energy to power every muscular contraction, glandular secretion, and mental process. The breath is intimately linked to all aspects of human experience. So this is when we begin to think about how it is that we breathe and whether or not we're breathing correctly to be able to get the most out of our experience and to get the most out of our health. So this is where I want to go into explaining one part of pranayama. The first part of pranayama, which for me is really the easiest, perhaps the most obvious, but one that I'd like everybody to become aware of if they take nothing else away from today, right? Is this 3 parts to our lung that we're breathing into. Okay, and I want you to begin to use your entire lungs. And to do this, we have to, first of all, build up to it, but it's called yogic breathing, when you breathe using your entire lungs. And you won't be able to do it for the full day because your mind will be distracted elsewhere. You'll forget and you'll return back to just breathing through the thoracic chest, the kind of natural breathing. But if you can and when you can, I'd love for you to be able to practice this. This is something that I often drop into when I'm cooking. So that, you know, I just find it very meditative, sort of stirring pots, cutting vegetables, that sort of thing. And when I kind of get into that zone, I do again become aware of the processes in my body. And this is something, this to me is like the perfect time to practice that. And when you're in the bath as well, not so much in the shower. I find showers quite active, but the bath, and so, excuse me, certainly before bed is a great time to be able to do it, because you're really then bringing the most amount of oxygen into your body before you then rest and revitalize and revive overnight. So first of all, put your left hand onto your heart and your right hand onto your belly. So again, I'm just going to adjust myself so that you can see my core self. So here we are. So my left hand is onto my heart. My right hand is onto my belly. Now, as you breathe in naturally, you'll feel that you're breathing into this space here, into your heart space. As you breathe out, you'll feel again that you're breathing into this part. You may feel a little bit going on around the belly, probably not too much, as you just breathe quite shallowly, and quite, you know, normally. This is kind of a relaxed, natural breathing pattern that we would all probably adopt. Now, what I want you to do is to really think about breathing into the belly now. So you're essentially going to be pushing out with your belly into your right hand, okay? And what happens is when you extend through the belly with your breath, you're allowing the diaphragm, which is the muscle that sits around here on your stomach, to drop all the way down and for the lungs to expand down with them. So that means that your lungs that are here suddenly begin to go and drop down to about there, coming up and then down, okay? So as your small lungs, when you're just breathing, they just stay there. And as you drop down the diaphragm, they enable, because they're like balloons, to be able to come down further. So you absorb another third of the amount of oxygen that your body can breathe in. So initially you've got the 1/3 up here, you've got the 2/3 down here. So just for a moment, I want you to just practice belly breathing, okay? So just breathing into this right hand. Now the trick to this is really to allow the stomach to come out and to keep the ribs in towards the side. So if we are sitting down watching the television, we've usually collapsed our stomach. Our shoulders are usually rounded. We have dipped the stomach inwards, or the lower ribs at any stage are coming down and squishing into our stomach, not allowing our lungs, to expand downwards or to expand out any other way other than out. Okay, so you might notice that when you're sitting down, especially on a sofa or something where you're all just crumpled up, basically, you can feel that your rib cage is coming out to the side. It's because it's got nowhere else to go. It's got nowhere else to go other than out to the side. And you may even notice on some sort of larger people that there's even some movement of the arms with that, that because the breathing is so laboured that it actually expands as much as it can to get out, and there is some movement into the shoulders, into the arms. If you're just sitting up straight, will help to adjust that. But now I'd like you to either lie down on your back or stand up just so that you can do this. Lying down is preferable because it means that you can really relax. Excuse me. Right. So you've got your left hand on your heart so that you can feel into your heart, and then you can feel into your thoracic chest. You've got your right hand onto your belly. Now, as you breathe in, I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose and really push the belly out so that you're pushing the hand out. And you'll notice that the rib cage doesn't really move to the side, because what's happened is the lungs have been allowed to expand down rather than out the side. They're coming down. So you'll feel that as you blow up your belly, breathe in, allow the diaphragm to drop down. The rib cage stays quite still. The diaphragm drops down, the hand comes out, the belly comes out, and then as you breathe out, again, the rib cage stays still, the belly retracts, comes back down to being flat, and again, as you breathe in, the hand comes out. As you breathe out, the hand comes back in. Okay, so when you breathe into the thoracic chest and then into the belly, you're using two parts of your lungs. And then there's a third part. There's the clavicle. And the clavicle we don't use unless you're consciously aware of that you're using it, or if you are in, like I said earlier, if you're in a state of real exertion, if you've really had to run, then you'll feel that the chest is opening up like that. And if you're having an asthma attack and going into that panic mode again, then you'll feel like that you're really pulling in around this area as well, that your lungs are straining to take in the oxygen. So what we're going to do is we're going to practice 3-part breathing. So initially, again, replace your hands on your heart and your right hand onto your stomach. And I want you to just be conscious of breathing into your left hand, into your thoracic, into your heart space for 3 deep breaths. Okay. And when I say deep, what I'd like you to do is really practice a minimum of 3, and then hold for 1, and then breathe out for 3 and hold the breath out for 1. Okay, so this is just kind of bringing a gentle rhythm into your breath so that you'll be able to notice the change when we then begin to bring in the belly breathing. Okay, so if you breathe in for the count of 1, 2, 3 into the thoracic chest, and then breathe out for 1, 2, 3. Breathe in for 1, 2, 3, and breathe out for 1, 2, 3. Last one. Breathe in for 1, 2, 3, and breathe out for 1, 2, 3. And you would have found that easy, I would assume. I would assume that actually that was quite nice. That was quite relaxing. Your right hand's really relaxed on your belly. Your left hand was just opening up just a little bit, coming up and down alongside the ribs. But that was fine. That was very easy. Now we're going to add the same thing, but we're going to breathe not only just into the thoracic chest, but also into the belly as well. So as we breathe in, we really want both hands to be beginning to come out. Now this might require a little bit more thought because of course, you have to engage that lower part of your body. You have to engage the lower lung. You have to engage the diaphragm. And so you may need to kind of think about this one. Obviously close your eyes if you want to. And again, we're going to take a deep breath in. We're going to try to breathe in for 5 because it's a bigger breath. But if you struggle with that, 3 or 4 again is fine. Again, we'll hold for 1 and then we'll breathe out for 5. Okay, so taking a deep breath in for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then hold and then breathe out for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and letting all that breath out to the point that your belly is now sinking in. Okay, so you felt that your hand's grown on the left hand and that your right hand's been pushed out by the rise of the belly. Again, you shouldn't have felt too much around the ribs there. So again, let's practice that again, breathing into the thoracic, breathing into the lower core, into the belly. Deep breath in for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then breathe out for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and drop down. Good. Okay, now we're going to breathe into all 3 parts, so engaging the clavicle as well, and this is the full yogic breath, okay, when we do it all together. So initially what I want you to do is breathe in, so that we can isolate where we're breathing into. Breathe into the thoracic chest as much as you can, to the point where you feel like you're really, really full, and then hold for 2 seconds, and then breathe in again. And then you'll notice that you feel the clavicle chest, okay? It's crazy. So take a deep breath in, feel the thoracic and the belly part, the stomach part of your breath, of your lungs as well. So taking a deep breath in for as long as you can, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then just hold for 1, 2, and then breathe in again. And you'll find you breathe in and up here. Okay, and then you can breathe out for 7 perhaps, or 5 or 7, whichever you want to do. Just breathe out slowly to be able to let everything go equally. All right, no quick deflation. Try to keep the control. That way you'll build the tone into the muscles of the lungs. That's what they are, they're muscles. So you want to be able to build the control, so that basically regular practice of pranayama will build your lung control, build your muscle control around your lungs, and allow you to absorb even more through the strength of the lungs and the ability for them to be able to expand just that little bit further each time. So same thing. Take a deep breath into the thoracic, deep breath into the belly, expand and draw in for either up to 5 to 7. And then hold for 1, 2, and then breathe in again. And you'll find you really breathe in up and high up here, because you've already filled the belly, you've already filled the chest, and now you're really breathing into the top of the chest, and you feel like it comes kind of just under here, underneath the collarbone. Okay, so there's my collarbone under here. It's coming all up here, and that's where the top of the lungs are. So that means you're breathing into your clavicle, the clavicle part of your lungs as well. Now, when you begin practicing this, I always do it as a 3-parter, so that I become really innately aware of how my lungs are responding, and whether there's any tension. Again, you can assess tension, you can assess emotion, you can assess disease, you can assess, anything really, anything that's kind of going on in your internal stuff. You'll get a flag from breathing, from this yogic breathing. Okay, so when I breathe in, for example, I'm lying down in the morning and I'll take a few yogic breaths before I begin anything, just to really expand the lungs, get them awake. Chances are that overnight I've been shallow breathing again, because that's what we all tend to do in at night time in breath. We just shallow breathe through it. So what I really want to do is expand the breath, so that I know when I get in to start doing my asanas, then I'll actually have, again, the lungs have been opened up, the muscles there have been warmed up, and I'll have the best chance of absorbing as much energy and as much oxygen and all of the things that I know I want to do before I start. So taking a deep breath into the thoracic chest and filling up the belly, and then stopping and then pausing, and then taking another deep breath up into the clavicle, and then you can hold that, and you can feel that the air gets absorbed into your bloodstream, because there's a sort of a natural depletion that goes on in your lungs when the oxygen is absorbed by the blood. And again, this goes back to the principle of being able to incite longevity into our lives and better health, because actually you're allowing, but through the presence of your breathing, your rhythmic breathing, you're allowing time to be able, for your body to be able to absorb the nutrients that you're bringing in through the breath. And I suppose this leads us on to the explanation of how the breath works, which again, maybe we're not aware of. Maybe we kind of never really spent that much time thinking about the breath. But there are 4 parts to our breath. There are 4 parts. You've got the inhalation, you've got the retention of the inhalation, you've got the exhalation, and then you've got the expulsion, I suppose, just holding the breath out, right? Now there are 4 natural parts to our breath. that I certainly wasn't aware of. And I don't know, I haven't taught anybody that's been aware that there's 4 parts of their breath before. Most people think it's just in, out, and that's, that's how we breathe. But actually, if you follow yourself breathing naturally, you do always pause before you take a breath in or a breath out. Always. It's like you can't really get away with it, because that's the natural part of how we breathe. And when you slow it down and you begin to work with that natural rhythm, you can really give yourself the opportunity to absorb more oxygen, expand the lungs, expand the capacity around the heart. And then also when the breath is expelled, you've got this kind of moment of peace in your body, where it's neither in energy or in sort of the repulsion of toxins, shall I say. It's neither in an energetic pull in, nor in that push out. And there's that peace. There's that kind of that finite area where it's just peace. There's nothing. I think it's kind of it's the peace, it's the calm, it's the nothingness. It's that part of that duality where there's something, and then there's just that nothingness between the breath. And when we talk about in yoga, the most important part of breath is the retention, not the inhalation, not the exhalation, but the retention, that period that we want to elongate so that our bodies can absorb the most amount of oxygen, the most amount of nutrients that are being carried around by this oxygenated blood. And that's, it's also that holding in and allowing all that to happen. So again, when you're in a time of stress, or you're in a time of upset, or, anything like that, and your breath becomes labored, it becomes quicker, becomes more anxious itself, the retention level is so low. You're going to be struggling to kind of be breathing in as much oxygen as that you need. And so everything begins to deplete because of that. It's one of the reasons that stress is so harmful for us. So one of the most important parts of the breath is the retention, is being able to actually hold it in and allow all those systems and all that stuff to take place before you then let all the systems release and relax and let go, so that you can cleanse. And then you have your peace, and then you start again. So it's that beautiful circle of breathing in, holding, and breathing out. And then just holding the breath out and staying in peace, staying with nothing. It's the detachment. That to me is psychologically a very important part to recognize, is that actually you detach from every single breath that you have. And the crazy thing to that is, if you said, if I said to you that detach from your breath, you think, she's gone mental. What do you mean detach from my breath? Like it's my, I need to breathe, otherwise I'd just die right there. But actually with every breath, you're taught that, you're taught this lesson of detachment. You're taught that actually let it go, because what you next need is just around the corner. And it's a constant building of faith. It's a constant building of trust, in life, and in your purpose in being here, I suppose, really, as well. That's kind of how I see it. Going a little bit off track, but that's definitely how I see it. Is that actually this peaceful place is the point of gratitude, because you've taken your breath in, you've absorbed it, everything's gone in, lovely, you've expelled, you've detoxified, and then there's this calm where you just have the opportunity to be grateful and to let go, and just to be grateful, and to say kind of, like a goodbye, and recognize the change that, and then start again. And, these cycles are so poignant to me, because it's just that constant, it's the cycle of life and death. The cycle of breath in and out. It's the cycle of change. It's the metamorphosis, right? The metamorphosis that you can get with every breath. It's the ability to be able to let go of anything that doesn't serve you, and be fine with that. Be at peace with that before you then move on to something else. It's kind of like, it just comes full circle. It's this cycle is just fascinating to me, because it's in so much of our bodies and our minds, and the way we work, and the way the universe works, and all that sort of thing. It's crazy. So it's all those sorts of things. So when you're breathing in, and you're practicing your yogic breath, try to do like 10 of these before you go to bed at night, or 10 of them when you wake up in the morning. Or if you want to calm yourself down, try yogic breathing. If you suffer from asthma or bronchitis or anything like that, then this one's a fine one to do, but just go gently. Don't expect too much of yourself initially anyway. Just go gently and try to build the numbers up. I'm always using numbers to count how much how big I'm breathing in. And some days, my lung capacity seems greater than others. And often when I ask, why that is, I know it's because actually I feel anxious about something, or my mind is working quicker than it perhaps was yesterday, pardon me. We get this a lot with yoga, actually, being present in your mind and your body and your emotions. It's very easy to marry up what's happening in your body and why. So instead of being critical of myself, now I'll be much more understanding and recognize what it is I need to look for. So pranayama is a great way of being able to do that as well. If you practiced yesterday, for example, and you were breathing in for 5 and you were holding for 2 or 3, and then you were breathing out for 5 and you were holding out for 2 and 3, but then the next day, you were breathing in for 3 and you were holding for 1 and you're breathing out for 3 and you're breathing out for 1, then notice that the breath has gotten shallower and that there'll be a reason for that. At some level, the energy that you're utilizing within your body is more anxious, is, speeded up a little bit. Try to look for the clues in your life or in your mindset that is having that effect on your breath. And again, just try to calm it down. So if you're finding that actually naturally what you want to do is kind of a 3-1-3-1, and that's about as much as you can do, then just gently try to carry that on for perhaps a few more than 10 breaths. And perhaps that's sort of 20 breaths or something like that. Then try to extend it just by 1. So you're bringing in 4-2, 4-2. Okay. And just try to gently move through it. Think about, really notice, what comes up in your mind, any emotions that you feel in your body as well. And perhaps as you begin to shift your perspective around those, you'll notice a difference in your breath as well. I know I've let go of emotion because I've realized that, like when I've been worried about things, and I've noticed that my breath has become shallow, and I know why it is. I know because I'm worried about like the kids at school, for example, something like that. And when I begin to think into why it is that I'm worried about them at school, most recently, just because my son's finding it a little bit hard at school at the moment. He's not particularly inspired, and he feels like it's a real waste of his time. And I'm just worried, like we didn't bring him back for that. I digress, but you can see that in my mind, there's a lot of worry there. There's a lot of kind of concern about him, and as much as I'll talk myself through and be like, he has to find his own way. He has to find his own path. This is all a learning curve for him. This will give him more appreciation. And all I can really do there is try to stimulate some interest. Try to, invoke some kind of passion in him for going there, or just even a realization of why it is that he's going through this at the moment, and the fact that, it, it's almost like a rite of passage in terms of humans, if your development anyway, that you kind of get through something like this in your life, whether it be school or whether it be a job that you hate, or something like that. There's always something you come up against it and you just feel like, just why am I even doing this? This is such a waste of time. It's being able to kind of move through that always, I think. But that sort of thing will bother me. And I don't even necessarily realize it when I wake up in the morning. I'm not, first thing I'm thinking about, it's not about my son going to school, but it's probably something that's come over with me through nighttime and into the morning. And then when I get on my mat and I start being very present in myself, then I start to realize that, something's bothering me. What is that? And yeah, literally, I get the answers come through, like what is it that's bothering me? What, I've noticed that I'm shallow breathing. What is it that I'm bothered about? What is it that's worrying me? And it'll come through almost straight away. And then I'm kind of, okay, yeah, all right, well, we'll breathe into that one and take a deep breath in. And as you breathe out, just let it go and say the same things like I've said, just now, just like, actually he has to deal with this. This is something that's, he's brought into his life so that he can clear. This is, I just need to be there for him, to support him and to help guide him. But ultimately, this is his journey. And, with every breath out, I'm releasing and relaxing into that knowledge. And before too long, I'm deep breathing again, and I've let go of that, and I've calmed my anxiety, and I've calmed the worry that I was feeling around it. And I'm able to kind of move on and through without too much without any too much problem. So there's a lot of being able to calm anxieties, calm worries, that sort of thing through breath. And again, you can do many of these practices in the car if you're waiting for school pickup, on your way to work, in the train even. I've done alternate nostril breathing, Nadi Shodhana, in the train on the way into work, when I felt like I needed to kind of calm myself down a little bit. Ideally, you want to be able to do it outside, ideally somewhere where there is fresh air. If not, somewhere perhaps like when I practice my pranayama in the morning, even if it's freezing cold outside, I'll just open the window just a little bit and then go and sit near it, just so that I feel like I'm getting a little bit of fresh air in. You're looking at cleansing, you're looking at clearing. And even though I don't believe for 1 second that the air I'm breathing outside my window is particularly clean, I do know that it's not perhaps as stale as it is inside the house. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, there are not too many juggernauts passing by my front window. So I take the chance and open the window and I actually enjoy the cool air coming in. It'll make your mind a lot more alert. And it brings energy, as I say, into the body. So, you begin to feel, even at 5 o'clock in the morning, alive and alert, but calm. And that's a lovely dynamic. That's my favorite dynamic, actually, calm and alert. The two kind of sounds quite a paradox, but it's absolutely a place of perfection for me in my mindset of just being really alert, really on the ball, very, very present in where I am, and with like all senses sort of tingling, but at a very centered, very calm, very balanced place. And that's what pranayama can bring you at any time in the day when it's practiced. So I'm going to give you another example of something that you can do at home. Ideally, this would be practiced first thing in the morning or as sun goes down. They're the better times to practice it. There are lots of Indian rules. There are lots of kind of yogic rules, like being clean when you practice, not practicing too close to a shower or a bath. So say, for example, you've had a wash, leave it about half an hour before then, just so that you can allow the body's temperature to regulate. Don't practice pranayama on a full belly. If you have any respiratory issues like asthma, bronchitis, there are some pranayama techniques that you perhaps shouldn't practice, like the one that I'm going to do to show you cooling. I'm going to show you 2 ways of balancing the body, balancing the energies in the body. One way of cooling the body if it's a hot day, and one way of warming up the body if it's a cold day, or indeed if you'd like to improve the detoxification within and around your stomach and your lungs and throughout your blood as well. So the first one we're going to do is Nadi Shodhana Technique 1, which is alternate nostril breathing. Now, we usually use one hand in yoga, and we're going to use the thumb and the little finger from that one hand. Now, I'm right-handed, so for me, it's going to be my right hand always. When you raise your hand, don't hold it out to the side. Don't, hold it aloft. It needs to be relaxed because you're going to be staying there, focusing on your breathing for a while. Okay, so it needs to be quite relaxed. Now, the thought is that if you breathe in and out of your left side first, then that is a really cleansing way of being able to of using your pranayama. So we're going to start with engaging through the left nostril first, which of course then permeates up into the right side of the brain, which is the more physical side of you. So that kind of makes sense. If you're really trying to clear your mind, perceptions, emotions, anything like that, then you can start by closing off the left and using the right, because that goes into the more sort of creative, the left side of your brain. And those are just kind of things that you can play around with perhaps, but that's the science behind the nadis and the sun and moon energy, and how you can then purify and clean what's coming up for you as well, so that you can be really specific, if you want to be, about what it is that you're shifting. So first of all, we're going to start with our left nostril open then, and closing the right nostril with our thumb. Now we're just going to take, again, for the count of 3, hold for 1, breathe out for 3, hold out for 1. Okay, so that's inhaling for 1, 2, 3, holding for 1, and then breathing out for 1, 2, 3, and holding out for 1. Okay, so that's the basic rhythm that we're going to start this with, so that you can get an idea, because I don't know, I'm playing it safe because I don't know, the state you're all in at this time of the night or day. on a Wednesday. So we're going to start here. So closing off the right nostril, sitting up straight. Please make sure that you're either lying down flat on the floor. Ideally, you're sitting up straight. Ideally, you're sitting up like legs crossed, spine straight, plenty of room for movement for your diaphragm and your chest. Spine long, crown of the head coming up towards the sky so that all of your airways are nice and clear. Again, relax the weight of your legs, relax the weight of your ankles, your knees, relax the weight of your hips, really feel yourself grounded into the floor. If you have back problems, you can't sit on the floor, then you can sit on a chair. Try to make it a hard chair, one that's going to mean that your knees are slightly lower than your hips again, so that we're not contracting anywhere around the diaphragm. You're allowing plenty of room for the diaphragm to come down and for movement to happen around the thoracic, the belly, and the clavicle when we get to that point. So closing the right nostril off with the thumb. You can just push against it, that will close it off, and then we're breathing through the left side. So we're going to take 3 deep breaths in on this left side. Take a deep breath in for 1, 2, 3, and hold. Then exhale for 1, 2, 3, and hold the breath out. Now breathe in for 1, 2, 3, and hold. Then breathe out for 1, 2, 3, and hold the breath out. Last time, breathe in for 1, 2, 3, and hold. Then breathe out for 1, 2, 3, and hold the breath out. Okay, now we're going to swap. So we're going to lift our thumb off of our right nostril and press down with a little finger onto the left nostril and begin to breathe through the right side. Now you may find that one nostril is clearer or more bunged up than the other one. I'll explain that in a moment. Let's continue on with this. So pressing into the left side, take a deep breath in through the right for 1, 2, 3, and hold. Then breathe out for 1, 2, 3, and hold the breath out. Breathe in for 1, 2, 3, and hold. Then breathe out for 1, 2, 3, and hold the breath out. Last one, breathe in for 1, 2, 3, and hold. Then breathe out for 1, 2, 3, and hold the breath out. Then release the hand down and take a deep cleansing breath through both the nostrils, feeling the change since practice. If you feel like you might be a little bit clearer, you can practice more breaths. I mean, the 3, I'm just going to make some difference, but not going to make a massive difference, but just to give you an idea. You do usually around 5 to 10 rounds of those, 5, on each side. So a round would be closing the right nostril, starting on the left and doing 5 breaths in and out. So a breath in and a breath out is 1 round. So you could start off with 5 of those and then build it up gradually day after day or week after week, depending on how you're finding it. And then same thing on the other side. So then, and then you move always from the left to the right. So you're clearing both and keeping yourself in balance. And you can even do, if you want to, 5 on one side, 5 on the other, 5 on one side, 5 on the other. Feel into it. Don't overdo it. Remember, the idea is that you actually expand through the lungs and you develop and build the strength in your lungs so that you can draw as much energy in as possible whilst clearing the nadis as well, whilst clearing the energy paths that are linked in with the prana, with the life force. And then we're going to practice Nadi Shodhana technique 2, which is alternate nostril breathing again. But this time we are breathing in almost a circular motion around our nose. I'm just going to have to take a drink. Always breathing. Drying out my mouth. Okay, so we're going to start again with our thumb closing over our right nostril, breathing in through the left side. But this time what we do is going to breathe in through the left side, then we're going to close our left, open our right, and breathe out through that right side. Then we're going to breathe in through that right side, and then close the right, open the left, and breathe out. Then breathe in through the left side, then close the left, open the right, and breathe out. Breathe in through the right side, then close the right, open the left, and breathe out. Breathe in through the left side, then close the left, open the right, and breathe out. Breathe in through the right side, Then close the right, open the left and breathe out. Breathe in through the left side. Close the left, open the right and breathe out. Breathe in through the right side. Then close the right, open the left and breathe out. Breathe in through the left side. Then close the left, open the right and breathe out. Breathe in through the right side. Then close the right, open the left and breathe out. Last one. Breathe in through the left side. Then close the left, open the right and breathe out. Breathe in through the right side. Then close the right, open the left and breathe out. Then drop your hands down and take another deep cleansing breath in through both the nostrils. And really feel how clear that's made kind of this whole area of your nose as well. Now actually I feel a bit blocked up, but then I wasn't doing it properly. Quite hard to do it and not sound like a little dwarf or something where you're blocking up your nostril trying to teach. Okay, so that one, they're the alternate nostril breathings. And if you just do those at any time when you want to kind of calm down, then, you know, that would really help to adjust the balance in your body and really kind of begin to clear the mind, and allow again the body to detoxify, allow yourself to bring in as many many vitamins as you can and nutrients as you can, along with the breath, along with the oxygen that you're drawing in, and really stimulating the prana in your body as well, so bringing yourself more energy levels. Then the next one we're going to do is the cooling breath. Now this is ideal if it's a boiling hot day. And again, you know, why we're not taught this instead of, oh, I suppose I know why we're not taught this instead of going to the ice machine and getting a cold drink, or, you know, or sticking the aircon on, or, you know, it doesn't cost anything to do this. So no one's profiting. So I suppose that's why we're not really taught to do this. But I'm going to teach you today. If you have asthma, bronchitis, or any excessive mucus through a cold or anything like that around your lungs, around your throat, around your nose, don't practice this one at home, okay? But this is quite simple. And this is one of my daughter's favourite ones as well, because she loves to curl her tongue. So what you do principally is you curl your tongue into a kind of a tube like this. Like that. And what you're going to do is you're going to breathe in through the mouth and out through the nose. Okay. Now, when you breathe in through the mouth, what happens is you cool the breath on the tongue. You bring it in, you take that cool breath down into your lungs. And then as you breathe out through your nose, the hot breath then comes out the other way. So as you breathe in, and then breathe out through your nose. Now, again, you can practice around 5 or 10 of those. You might find that after a while your tongue will dry out a little bit, but you know, that's fine. You can kind of just re-wet and reassume the position, and just breathe in through your mouth like that. Now, if you can't make this kind of tongue curling, I know people can't, if you can't make the tongue curling shape with your tongue, then you can do it by letting your tongue go heavy into your mouth and sort of bringing your mouth into like a round circle. So allow the tongue to rest heavy onto the back of the teeth and onto the lower, you know, the lower part of your mouth, so that again, when the air comes in, it hits the base of your tongue. It will cool when it's taken down into the throat. And obviously the reason that you don't practice this with asthma or with bronchitis or any excessive mucus is because it's a cooling. And when you have mucus, for example, really you're looking for the body to kind of burn it up and evaporate that mucus, that excess kind of fluid that's going on in your body. And with bronchitis, same thing. You don't want to bring any cool air down in there, because it will just the bronchial tubes will just want to go, oh, it's cold out there. You know, it's the same as if you've got bronchitis, don't go outside on a really cold day, because bringing that cold air in is actually only going to aggravate the situation. So that's the cooling breath. And again, you can practice around 5 to 10 of those. It's a nice thing to be able to do when you're lying in the sun or something like that, just to be able to cool the temperature of your body, or if you're anywhere you're getting hot and flustered. It's a nice one to do if you're one of those people that gets really nervous around an interview, and you can feel yourself beginning to kind of get a bit hot and a bit sweaty, and you're embarrassed about all that sort of thing. Then just take a moment, and you can just sort of dip your head if you want to or something like that. But you can just then begin to do that cooling breath by rolling the tongue out and breathing in through the tongue. So and again, keep the breath slow. So we want to keep that as slow as possible, so that the most amount of breath is coming in and calming you down, as it's cooling you down. And as you're breathing out through the nose, you're really, again, allowing all those toxins to flow out, allowing anything from anxiety, from nerves, from, feeling stressed through the heat, allow any of that to come out. So the next one, the final one for tonight, is the Ujjayi breath. Now, this is one that if you practice yoga before, you may be familiar with. It's used all the time throughout Ashtanga yoga, which is a dynamic set practice. They have 3 series of Ashtanga, but you practice Ujjayi breath throughout each one. Not perhaps as a beginner, but certainly as you begin to advance through your practice. And it's like a way of heating the body. So in Ashtanga, it's kind of all about really keeping the body warm and heated throughout, so that you get maximum level of toxin detoxification, so that you burn off the fat, so that you warm up all the muscles in the body really, really quick, so that you can get into these more advanced asanas. The series 3 of the Ashtanga primary series is like crazy poses, really advanced poses, which you have to be super warmed up to be able to even think about doing. So one of the ways of being able to do that is by utilizing the breath, utilizing the pranayama, the energy source, to be able to create the heat inwardly. Now, as much as I would use this in my yoga practice, I also find it's brilliant when it's cold weather. Like you're getting cold and you're standing outside, for example, on a train station waiting for a train that's been delayed for like 40 minutes, and you can't feel your feet, and your hands are dug deep in your pockets, and it's freezing cold, and your nose is beginning to fall off, and your ears are really, really cold, and your cheeks are beginning to sort of spark with the tightness from the weather. This is a great way of being able to generate heat just literally through breathing. Now this is slightly different. We're going to relax the muscles in the back of the throat and breathe in and out through the throat. So I'm going to bring myself a little bit closer to my camera so that you can perhaps hear this a little bit better. But essentially, when you are practicing Ujjayi breath, you are relaxing the muscles in the back of the throat and allowing the breath that you draw in through the nose to hit the back of the throat, excuse me, on the way in and on the way out. It's kind of really just noisy breathing. It sounds a little bit like a hissing sound. Yeah, it actually, I believe it sounds different for each person, however they do it. But it's kind of like this heavy breathing type thing, okay? So I'm going to breathe in and out of my nose and practice Ujjayi breath now for you. Just practice. I'm just going to lean in a little bit so you can perhaps hear me a bit better. Okay. It's so nice to breathe. I love it. I was just like, oh, I could just go to sleep there. It's lovely. But it's really just being able to breathe, bring the breath in through the nose and take it through to the back of the throat, and just allow it to kind of resonate down around the vocal cords at the back as it goes down. So again, nice long breaths. And holding breath in and then breathing out and then holding the breath out for maximum absorption and to be able to grow the strength in the lungs. But like I say, just calming yourself down if you're in a place where you're getting cold and you need to sort of warm up, or if you'd like to bring more heat into your energy practice, specifically yoga. I don't know if I would suggest this with much else. I don't know. I can't really imagine. Maybe Pilates, you might want to use it, but I don't know. I don't know so much about that. But certainly when you utilize the breath, your J breath, alongside asana practice, everything does heat up. You really begin to feel like, oh, first of all, it takes a lot of concentration to maintain that breath practice throughout asana. And you really, I mean, one of the beautiful things about practicing yoga, asana, and your breath and your pranayama alongside one another is that it becomes so absorbed in the movement and the breath and the kind of the letting go of the mind almost, that there's nothing else can come in, and when you're listening to yourself breathing through a J breath, because it shouldn't be so loud that everybody can hear you, but it just so that you can hear yourself and that you can feel and reap the rewards of that breath. But it's something, again, just keep practicing, and if you just allow it to kind of hit the back of your throat, then you'll find that actually there's no strain. It doesn't make you cough or anything like that. It doesn't have to be super, super loud. The more you force it, and the louder it is, the less you'll be able to sustain it. So you need to try and find that balance with your breath and with your body, where you are comfortably at a point of sort of challenging, but not over challenging, not going too far with it all. But Ujjayi breath is a great one, again, like I say, for bringing heat into the body, and to be able to really calm the mind through listening to the breath as well. Even if you don't practice through asana, you can practice Ujjayi breath and just practice listening to your breath, counting through the numbers that you're using to get through your inhalation, your retention, your exhalation, and your expulsion of breath, and utilize that for the benefits that you get with that. Whenever you practice pranayama, you'll find that you really calm down. It's great for really beginning to calm down. And if you're having a stressful period and you just need to take a moment, a lot of people say, don't they, just go and take 5 breaths, something like that, time out, take a breath. These are quite common sayings, because we all know we're just never really tutored, if you like, in how to use the breath, and what techniques there are to you. Take a breath, you might be like, and that's not calming you down in any way. You're forcibly inhaling, you're forcibly exhaling, you haven't retained anything, and you're just kind of it out. But when you begin to bring calm into it, and purpose, and intention, you can really calm the mind very, very quickly, calm the emotions very, very quickly, and bring yourself into a more centered mental space and emotional space than you were at before. So I hope that's given you something to practice. You'll be going to bed now, or whatever, just like hands on your heart, breathing into the belly, feeling into it all. But this is your life source. This is something that you're doing all day, every day. Don't forget that it has the power to help you and to guide you through your life as well. Be aware, be aware of self. And your breath is something that is so intrinsically you. Everyone has different levels of breath, different patterns of breathing, different ways of breathing. Again, your breath pattern is as unique to you as your fingerprint is. You may have people that share the same number of breaths in a minute that you do, but it's very rare that you find someone who has the same kind of rhythm as breath as well that you do. And obviously in different situations, and under different influences, you'll find your breath changes. If you've recently had a cigarette, for example, you'll find your breathing is more shallow. Excuse me. If you have been recently running and you've just calmed yourself down and you try to take deeper breaths on the back of that, you'll find that you can, because your lungs are really warmed up. They've really been open and closed, and they're really warm as muscles. So you'll find that you're able to draw more breath in there. Great time to practice cooling down breath at the end of exercise, and getting off the treadmill and just kind of and cooling it all down. When it's a great way of just being able to bring sort of any sweating under control, any feelings of, overexertion, anything like that, just calm it all down. So thank you so much for listening to me again tonight. I hope that, like I say, you've taken something away with you from my talk on pranayama. And if you've got any questions or you'd like to contact me, you can email me on kirsty@thishappyguru.com, or go onto my website. It's in construction at the moment, but there'll be a little link that you can put your email address in, and it will filter through to me with your questions. And if there's anything else that you'd like to know, please feel free to ask. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Love and light to you all. Namaste.
Humanity has been on an epic journey of discovery, learning the truth about the world we live in. New discoveries about the true origins of humanity, ancient history, free energy, as well as the systematic corruption of world governments are now on the forefront of our daily reality. Is the world headed towards destruction based on control and power? Or is an opportunity now being presented to shift and uplift into a higher consciousness? My name is Mel V, co-founder and creative director of Conscious Consumer Network, an independent broadcast network that was launched on the 1st of January 2015. Conscious Consumer Network provides full training and an interactive support network for all broadcasters, and we are always looking for inspiring and educational content.
Hi, this is Lainey Liberty.
And this is Miro Siegel.
Conscious Consumer Network has expanded to multiple broadcast locations, increasing our availability and reach across the world, remaining on the cutting edge of independent media. If we wish to create a better world, we must first create better media, geared towards real education instead of indoctrination.
You guys really are what changing the world is going to be about. It's educating kids at a grassroots level.
Dare to seek a better world. Support independent media.